Theron Theorem, where we have serious discussions about absurd entertainment.
I would have voted for Obama a third time. Dean Armitage. The man of the house.
We're talking about Get Out and its spiritual successor, Us.
Yes, so these movies are honestly a bit old. You know, they're a few years old, right?
Yeah, but they're really good.
And I mean, okay, first of all, we want to talk about why we're talking about these movies. First of all, we needed something to talk about as a deep dive episode.
Yeah.
But these are something that we've considered talking about for a while. We just don't normally cover, standalone movies. Mm-hmm. But, we did the Cube series, so I guess now it's a thing that we've done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We recently actually rewatched these with a friend of ours.
Yes, so they're fresh on our minds.
Mm-hmm.
Some people might say that we shouldn't talk about them because these movies are very much about black people.
Mm-hmm.
And neither of us is black. So I do think that there is an element of this conversation that we're not going to be able to personally experience or relate to or be able to talk about. And there are certainly more qualified people to talk about that in particular.
Yeah, absolutely. But that doesn't mean we can't give our take on it.
Sure. And I wouldn't want a movie like this that gives great representation to not be discussed by people that aren't necessarily represented by it, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm an ace person. That's my claim to diversity, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So it would be great to see a big budget movie with an ace character for representation. But I wouldn't want that to be only discussed amongst ace people. I would want that to be discussed broader, get more mainstream support, you know?
Yeah, it's not like movies with entirely white cast don't get discussed by everyone.
Well, true, but that's a different that's normalized. See, that's the problem.
Yeah.
But so we're going to talk about it. But all things considered, I am white.
Yeah, I'm Puerto Rican.
Right. Neither of us is black. Mm-hmm. So caveat there. But we're going to discuss the movie anyway because it's really good and it's really important.
Yeah. These are like the only movies that we would ever own. We actually do own Get Out.
Yes. But another thing about the movies is simply kind of how they're a bit dated in a way.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I still think that what they talk about is relevant today.
Mm-hmm.
But, people might be surprised that we're having this podcast episode, considering people really stopped talking about these movies years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think they're very quintessentially Trump administration movies.
Yeah, they are.
Like, you see those movies and you go like, oh, that was a civil rights era movie, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or that's a very 2000s movie.
Mm-hmm.
Or a TV show and you go, oh, that's a Reagan era TV show that was only allowed to be because of cutbacks to child brainwashing by corporate advertisements.
Mm-hmm.
Stuff like that.
Yeah.
Where you can really feel like what era it was speaking from.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't necessarily mean speaking to. They can still be relevant outside of that. You can do like a Transformers analysis to see how it's still relevant today if you want it, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But what time is it speaking from? And I think these movies are very much, oppression under the Trump regime.
Yeah, they're very much 2016
to 2020
movies.
Yeah. And obviously, that doesn't go to say that we're not still currently under a great deal of oppression, right?
Obviously, yeah, but...
Yeah, even after in the Biden, whatever this is, even then, like, it's not that much better, but the Trump administration, I would argue, was much more overt in its hatred.
Yeah.
So, different. Oh, another good example is Parks and Recreation. You know that TV show?
Oh, yeah.
That is an Obama-era TV show.
Oh, absolutely.
That is a TV show that could not exist outside of the Obama administration. Because the entire premise of the show is like, hey, you want to see how government works? It's a little grimy in here, but we're improving it slightly day by day. That show, if it was still going, could you imagine what would have happened?
Oh, gosh.
There's a reason it went off the air.
Mm-hmm.
But, so we're talking about the two movies made by Jordan Peele, Get Out and Us. There are two separate movies, so we could have covered them in two different podcast episodes, but they're very similar in themes.
Yeah.
And they're obviously both, affected by the fact that they're made by the same person, Jordan Peele.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
So we're going to spend a while talking about Get Out for the first half, and then we'll switch over and talk about the other movie, Us.
All right.
So we should probably go through a synopsis of the plot. Obviously, this podcast is probably going to go better for you if you just watch the movies yourself.
Yeah.
But and you want to just think about the themes of them, or if you've seen them before and you want just to hear an analysis. So synopsis of the plot. You want to do that, Kira?
Sure. So, the first movie, Get Out, the synopsis of the plot is basically a black man goes to his white girlfriend's parents' house for a weekend, and turns out the family...
Okay. We need to use names.
Okay. Chris, the black man, is dating Rose Armitage, and he goes to the Armitage's place for a vacation with his girlfriend.
Yeah, they've been together long enough that he's meeting her parents.
Yep. And Rose's brother, Jeremy, is there. And then Rose's parents, Dean and Missy, are also there. And Chris meets them.
And the whole thing is very surreal. They have an extremely luxurious mansion. And a lot of acreage.
And they also have a groundskeeper named Walter and a maid named Georgina, both of which are black.
And they're the only people of color there. The entire family is very white.
Yep. While Chris was gone, he got his friend, Rod Williams, to watch after his dog. So his friend is at his apartment while he's gone. So strange things start happening while he's at his girlfriend's house. And it gets weirder and weirder. And at one point, they have a party where they invite a ton of their white friends over. And Chris sees one black person who he thinks he recognizes. He ends up actually sending a picture of this person to his friend, who identifies him as actually a missing person. And that's when things start to really go off the rails.
The entire movie is filled with a lot of scenes that don't make much sense. A lot of scenes that don't make much sense until you know the twist and you know what's going on. Like, there's something odd about Andre, right?
Yeah.
Or Logan, sorry.
Yeah, they call him Logan.
Yeah, there's something weird about him in that he's just not acting like himself, and you're not supposed to really understand. I mean, maybe actually, I wouldn't be surprised if black people watching the movie knew immediately what was going on, but a lot of other people that are watching it might be a little confused about what is it about his behavior that's so off. And this is a recurring theme. It happens with the groundskeeper as well as Georgina, right?
Yeah. Where he meets these black people out here and they don't act like any black person he's ever met.
Yes.
And that's obvious by the way he reacts to their behavior. And eventually, Chris decides he wants to leave.
Well, you forgot there's a scene of the auction.
Oh, right, yeah. During the party.
While Chris is, like, talking to Rose about how, like, this place is messed up, we gotta leave, right? While he's doing that, there's a silent auction, and the thing being sold is Chris.
Yep, there's a picture of Chris, so you can tell that he's the one being sold. So,
and the winner, the highest bidder, ends up being a blind art dealer. Art dealer, yes. Who had talked with Chris earlier, because Chris is a photographer. That's his day job. So they had a shared connection over that. And that's why the art dealer decided to buy him.
And then, when they try to leave that night, Chris finds pictures of Georgina and Walter And I think Andre too, with his girlfriend
Yeah,
Rose.
she has a whole stash of pictures with a whole bunch of other black people, even though he was supposedly the first black person she was with.
Yep. And
So he's like, we gotta get out of here now.
yeah.
And he doesn't trust anyone at this point, and eventually his girlfriend turns on him. They block the door, and he gets knocked out.
Yep. And then he's strapped to a chair, and it's explained that the whole thing is that Rose's dad, Dean, is a neurosurgeon, and he developed a surgery to take out a white person's brain and put it into a black person's body, basically.
Well, yes, that's the consequentialist thing that happens, right? But in actuality, they say it's a rejuvenation project. You can live forever by taking out your brain and putting in a new body. The body, the person's brain is just chucked out. Now, some of their personality, their soul or whatever, still exists in there in a place called the sunken place. And that's all that remains of you. Now,
Yes, and-
Dean's wife, Missy, she is a hypnotherapist.
Yep.
So their skills go hand in hand here, where all of the people that Rose brings have been primed to be highly suggestible through like hypnotherapy. And she takes advantage of that.
Yep.
Now,
And
the idea that it's always black people, like they bring this up where Chris gets to have a short chat with the art dealer. And he's like, why me? Why is it always black people? And he goes, oh, well, I don't care that they're all black. Like, it's obviously not, it's not an intentional policy that they always target black people. It's just an outcome they don't care about because they're racist.
yeah, although I wouldn't be surprised if the Armitage family specifically target black people.
Well, define target, right? I think every member of the Armitage family represents a different type of racism.
Yeah.
And like the brother Jeremy is like your KKK racism, right? And we should have done trigger warnings in this episode. Well, the movies, they're rated R or whatever.
Yeah.
And he is probably just like, yeah, I hate black people. He's going to get black people, right? But my point is they don't have a policy of that.
yeah.
Like, there's a bunch of lines during the party where they talk about how being black is fashionable. It's in right now. They objectify the black body as, like, strong and capable. So it's a very, like, patronizing type of racism. It's why we chose the quote that's kind of become something more than the movie. It's kind of outlived it. I would have voted for Obama a third time. This is your democratic racism.
Yep.
Not your liberal racism as opposed to your overtly conservative. Now, obviously the two bleed together. And in fact, I would argue that's kind of where it comes from, right? Like Dean says how his father was a sprinter who competed in the Nazi Olympics, the Olympics that were held by the Nazis.
Yeah.
And he was hoping to show that he was the best. Now, if you know what happened in that Olympics, a black American won. And that was a huge like middle finger to Hitler that the black American won.
Yep.
Yet Dean's father, he didn't care about that. He was just mad that he lost. He couldn't even be grateful for the symbol that was.
Yeah.
So we basically have a Nazi sympathizing type of.
Yeah.
I mean, not a Nazi, but like a. He just didn't care about giving a middle finger to Hitler. So you can see how that kind of gets watered down through the generations, but it's still very much there.
Yep. Rose is very much.
Sorry, I forgot to mention though. Oh, wait, no, sorry, you continue.
I was just saying Rose is very much the fetishist type of racist.
Yeah, she dates the black guys or occasionally the black woman, and she specifically gets off on the idea that they are black. And she's really manipulative and good at hiding that.
Yeah, she is.
It is an interesting thing that of a byproduct of this movie, which primarily focuses on being progressive in terms of blackness and race, but it also shows an example of what's effectively an abuser girlfriend taking advantage of a boy.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, of a man,
Yeah, that's true.
and that's just not something you see very often. So that's pretty cool.
Anyway, by the point that Chris is like taken and tied up and stuff, his friend is worried about him and takes the case to the cops because he's worried about his missing friend, and he gets laughed off.
Yeah, like literally, like it's a scene with a whole bunch of POC. He talks to like the cops that he thinks are going to be his friends because he's TSA, so he's like cop adjacent.
He likes to think he is.
Yeah, he's cop adjacent without actually like hurting anyone. His job is just making people annoyed. So, right? Yeah. Like I don't think TSA has ever stopped a terrorist.
No.
Yeah. Anyway. So the cops literally laugh him off because they aren't quite the allies he thinks they are.
And also he brings it to them as a theory that the Armitages are making black people into sex slaves.
Which is portrayed as a joke, but he wasn't that far off.
Yeah, I agree. I honestly think, yeah, you're completely right. So yeah.
Anyway, Chris is talking to the art dealer, and the art dealer says, "I don't care that you're black. I just want your body for your eyes. I want to see through your eyes." And Chris uses this thing where he, because of his tragic backstory with not stopping the death of his mother, he has like this thing where he like grinds his nails into the arms of the chair, and that comes to actually save him. He gets some of the cotton, puts it in his ears. That blocks out the hypnotherapy. And he's able to use as an opportunity to get the jump on Jeremy and knock him out.
Yep. And then he spears Dean through the chest with the head of a deer.
After they've already begun the surgery on the art dealer.
Yeah.
So he's not going to make it.
Yep. Yeah, so he kills Dean, which is like, this is when the movie becomes, this is a black person in a horror movie. They're not fucking around.
I mean,
they're gonna kill people.
Like, okay, this is, I don't know how much this is true, but tell me what you think of this idea, right? It is a trope in horror movies that black people, the black guy is the first guy to die, right? So, I don't know, you really kind of get the feeling that this is a black guy in a horror movie. He's not going to waste any time. He's taking these people out.
Yeah.
And considering what we've seen them do and how evil they are, you root for him. And it's actually a little astonishing how successful he is. But he is. He takes Dean out. He then goes upstairs to Missy. They have a scuffle. He ends up taking her out. Jeremy turns out not to have been down, and so he ends up taking him out, right? And he gets in the car, right?
Yeah, he finally makes it into the car.
But Georgina gets in the way. You find out, you've had enough like hints by this point to figure out that Georgina is the grandmother.
Yeah.
That they had put her in the body of the black woman that Rose had dated. But he feels sorry for her because, fellow person of color, he doesn't know exactly what's going on here. He has enough information to kind of glean that, she's not right in the head anymore. But he takes pity on her anyway and takes her with him. At this point, Rose is like coming out with like a rifle to chase them down.
Yep.
And she says, "Go get them, Grandpa." And you see Walter, the groundskeeper, running and sprinting like an Olympic marathon runner. Because he is.
Yeah.
He is the Nazi sympathizer. In the black man's body. So this is why the black people in the movie, like Logan or Andre, were acting so weird before.
Because they're white people.
Yes, that's it. They're just white. They've literally been internally gentrified.
Yeah.
It's the gentrification of your own mind, which is at least metaphorically or figuratively, probably a very real experience for black people. Like there's a concept I've heard of called like code switching. Yes. Yeah, where they just change the way they talk. And this is like that taken to a sci-fi extreme.
Yep. Eventually, Chris crashes the car, and Georgina is killed in the crash.
Well, because she attacked him.
Yeah. And then he gets out of the car, and the grandpa is still going after him. So he runs after him and catches up. But Chris remembers that the flash on the camera actually sort of
incapacitated Logan earlier in the movie.
Yes. And so he uses that.
Because we kind of skipped over that, but earlier at the party, there was an incident where he took a picture of Logan, and that's when he sent it to his friend and whatnot. The flash made Logan suddenly just go, "Get out. Get out." And they tried to act like it was just a seizure, but it was very weird.
Yes, and it turns out that the flash actually brings them out of the sunken place or something.
For just a moment.
Yeah. So he uses that against Walter.
Yeah.
And the person the person he used to be comes forward and shoots Rose and then shoots himself.
Yeah, he takes the gun, shoots her, and then points it to his own head and shoots himself. Because his existence is a living nightmare, and he doesn't have control over his own body.
And then Chris tries to finish off Rose because she struggles for the gun and, like, is going to shoot him.
And then as he's strangling her to death,
a cop car pulls up.
With sirens on.
With the lights, yeah. And this is the part of the movie where every black person in the watching,
even collectively,
just collectively are like holding their breath.
I mean, even you got that, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like I got that too, but I've heard stories about like white people watching the movie that just were like, "Oh yay, the cops are here! Yay!" It's like, no, you don't understand.
Yes. And Rose knows this.
She smiles and like laughs
and tries to scream out for help.
Yeah, because she knows black man over white girl's body choking her. He's seconds away from death. Cop's gonna shoot him.
Yep. And then Rod Williams steps out of the police car.
And he tells him to come over, and he sits in the car all bloody and everything and just looks at him and like, "How did you find me?" And Rod goes,
"I am TS motherfucking A. We handle that shit."
And it was a genuinely amusing ending. And so, yeah, that's the movie, right? And I guess we kind of did some analysis on the way of the recap, but, fun fact, apparently that wasn't the original ending.
Yeah, they originally had a much more depressing ending where Chris, like, ends up in prison or something.
Well, the person that steps out of the cop car isn't his friend from the TSA. It's the cop they saw earlier in the movie.
Yeah.
And that was just, like, too real.
Yeah.
It really bummed people out, so they changed it.
Yeah.
And honestly, I think the change was obvious. I think it was much better.
Yep.
Like, it doesn't need to be that, like, cruel.
Yeah, it doesn't
tragic,
need to be that realistic.
Like, you might say, the fact that you could use the word realistic there. So yeah, it's a movie about racism, but also how cops are bad, but, just kind of the black experience and being persecuted. And also about, like, gentrification internally.
Yep.
Also kind of like about being gaslit by society, because everyone in his life, all the white people at least, were, lying to him.
Yeah.
And so he kept going along with it, even though he knew something was wrong. And the only person he could count on was his black friend. And his black friend, as part of the TSA, was cop adjacent enough to not be a cop to be worth trusting. But when he went to the actual cops, even though they were people of color, they were of no use. Because I think here's the difference. They were gentrified the normal way. They are part of the system. They are the cops. They are the upholders of white supremacy. They laughed him off and did nothing to help. But his friend, his actual friend, his black friend, was there to support him.
So that's Get Out.
Yeah. Some people have criticized the movie for being like a bit like segregationist. Like there's literally not a good white character in the entire movie.
I think that's fine.
Exactly.
We have enough movies with white people.
I mean, yeah, do you really think people are going to say the same? Like, where are the good POC characters in X amount of movies, right?
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
how many times does that even go unnoticed, So, I don't think that's fair. Now, I guess you could technically say that such a criticism is true, maybe? It's valid, perhaps? Like, there are no good white people, and not all white people are evil. I just don't feel like that's particularly relevant to the story that it was trying to tell. You know?
Exactly.
It's like, this one's not about you. Or us, rather.
Yeah. All right. You want to talk about Us now?
Yeah, we talked for a while. We need to switch over. All right, so Us. We're Americans. Red. That's the quote we got for that one.
Yep. So, wow, this movie.
All right,
Us.
so the plot, let me help get started.
Yeah, sure.
It starts off with this girl named Adelaide. She's a kid, and she's at like this a beachside amusement park, and she goes into like this old derelict like Hall of Mirrors ride kind of thing, and while in there, finds another her. At first, she thinks it's a reflection. It's not. It's another her. She is traumatized by this event. Skip ahead to she's an adult. She has a husband. She has 2 kids, and they're going on vacation. And it's back to that same place.
Yep.
And when she realizes that, she has a bit of like PTSD from this. But her husband calms her down, and they decide to like go through with the vacation. Now, while they're vacationing, there is a white family. So this show like literally does the thing of like, see, not all white people are bad, because this other white friendly is just as friendly as the black family is.
Yeah.
You really get the feeling, though, that this black family is kind of out of the norm. Like, they are fairly financially wealthy, at least as wealthy as this white family.
No. The white family is notably more wealthy than
right.
the black family.
Yes, my bad. But they are kind of in the same class. They are friends. And I don't remember seeing any people of color just like generally vacationing around them. They seem to kind of stand out as the black family.
Yeah. But they were the main characters.
Right. But the difference is that unlike Chris in the Get Out movie, these people, they have a bit more money to them. So this is kind of a more affluent representation of black people in America.
So, eventually, one night, after they come home from the beach and everything, the power goes out in their summer house, and the son, Jason, says that there's a family in their driveway. And so the husband, Gabriel, goes out there and is like, what the fuck? And a few minutes and scuffles and break-ins and a bit of a fight later, they're sitting across from copies of themselves in red coveralls with a leather glove and gold scissors.
Are the scissors actually gold?
Yes. They're gold colored.
Are you sure?
Absolutely 100% sure.
The movie was really dark, so I didn't get a good look at them.
Yeah.
But anyway, so yeah, they try to fight back, but the whole family is basically kowtowed by the other family, their duplicate selves, and they come to terms with them. And you have Adelaide the mom, you have Gabe the father, you have Zora the daughter, and Jason the son, right? So they're all sitting on the couch, and across the coffee table is their duplicates. Red is Adelaide's counterpart, the mother. Abraham is Gabe's counterpart, the father. Umbre is Zora's counterpart, the daughter. And Pluto is Jason's counterpart, the son. And when they ask, who are they? Zora goes, they're us. Red says, we're Americans.
Mm-hmm.
And Red's the only one that is able to talk, but her voice is extremely raspy. Sounds hoarse. It was kind of like one of the selling points of the movie. Like, why does she sound like that?
Yeah.
Very creepy, very horror-esque.
Mm-hmm.
And she explains what they are. They are the tethered.
They are shadows of them.
There was a government conspiracy many years ago that has since been discontinued and forgotten, where...
They attempted to copy people.
Well, okay, so Red has a belief in God. She is religious. She is Christian, right? It is one of her defining character traits. So she tells the story from her point of view of being religious. That doesn't necessarily mean doesn't mean like the soul is real.
Yeah.
But she explains it in that, like, they have two bodies, one soul. The government tried to copy people to control them, and this is what we were left with. Mm-hmm. And that they are the underclass. That they have to follow the movements of the above ground people. They are tethered to them. And that her life has been absolutely horrible as the affluent, rich black family has lived their lives of luxury. Mm-hmm. And they want it back.
Yeah.
That's what they've come here to steal, their lives.
She calls herself the Shadow, and she says the Shadow hated the girl. And that's how she explains. Like, she explains that she's Adelaide's shadow and that she hates Adelaide for, getting to live this life while she was stuck underground.
So all four pairs end up splitting up as each of the four tries to enact their revenge. Abraham takes Gabe and tries to dump him off into the lake. Zora starts running as fast as she can to try to escape Umbrae.
Yeah, because she's a
athlete.
She does track.
Jason tries to entertain Pluto enough to not burn the house down, because he's kind of a pyromaniac.
Yep.
And meanwhile, Red just kind of talks to Adelaide and contemplates what she's going to do, because it's not going to be pretty.
Yep.
In the end, they get into fights and scuffles, and the whole family get to effectively get in the car. They kill Abraham, and they manage to get out of there. So they try to go to their friend, the rich white family's place.
They go in the boat over there, yeah.
Oh, right, not the car, the boat. They take the boat, yes.
Yeah, but yes, they managed to kill Abraham, and they try to go to their friend's place, Josh and Kitty, the white friends that they have.
Yeah.
And just before they arrive, we see Josh and Kitty and their twin teenage daughters, Becca and Lindsay, all getting killed by their tethers.
Yeah, you realize this isn't just a one local family kind of thing, right? And you first see this, by the way, in a really masterful and creepy shot where you see the two twins, and all of a sudden there's three of them, and then there's four, and then there's two again.
Yep. Yep.
So yeah, that was. Oh, and as they were dying, the Kitty she screams out like Alexa or whatever their version was called.
Ophelia.
Yeah. The home device. He's like, call the police. To which it says,
Plain NWAs, fuck the police.
which I feel like is just yet more commentary on the unhelpfulness of police.
Yeah, and that's, because Adelaide called the police at the start of this, and they have yet to arrive.
Oh, that is true. She also, literally the first sign of things went wrong, she called the police. Put a pin in that, by the way. That might be relevant.
So anyway, yeah. So they arrive there, and they find the tethers there, the tethered version of their friends, and they end up fighting them. And,
we don't need to go, play by play, blow by blow, but eventually they take them out. Even the kids having to go to fight.
Yeah.
To the point that after when they get in the car, Zora is driving the car, and Adelaide's like, what are you doing? Get out of the car. And she's like, I have the highest kill count.
Yeah.
and
also, Adelaide is cuffed, and her dad his leg is hurt. So
that's the explanation she uses. But because Gabe's like, actually, I have the highest kill count. I killed me. I killed
Josh.
He lists off all the ones he's killed. And Adelaide's like, actually, I killed one that you missed. And
Yeah.
so they're kind of like, it's a
It's a small comedic moment.
comedic relief, yeah.
Yeah.
So eventually they
Get in the car and go. And,
have to deal with Umbrae because they forgot about her.
yeah, they end up running her over. So now Umbre's dead.
Yep. So at this point, all that's left is Red and Pluto.
So they travel quite a bit through the night, and it's daytime again by the time we see them again. And they're out on a pier or dock or whatever.
Towards the amusement
towards
park.
the beach, towards the amusement park. And Pluto is in the middle of the road with fire behind him because he's a pyromaniac. And it turns out that it was a trap. They were going to set the car on fire. Jason has Pluto mime his actions so that Pluto walks back into the fire.
Jason's like a really smart kid. He's basically like figured out how they work.
Yeah.
That as the tethered, they've been indoctrinated to follow the movements of the overworld. Now, obviously, during this whole mess, they have rebelled against that. They are
Yeah.
fighting and killing.
Yeah.
But he realizes they're kind of naturally inclined to do that. So,
Pluto especially.
because he's a kid.
Yeah.
So he takes advantage of that and makes Pluto walk into the fire.
Yep. And then Red grabs Jason and runs.
And she runs down back into the underworld.
Yep. And Adelaide runs after her, leaving Gabe and Zora to sort of figure themselves out.
So we figure out, we finally get to see the underworld properly, right? And they go back through the Hall of Mirrors. You find out it has secret access to a tunnel, which leads to like a government tunnel to a facility, to
A golden escalator
that goes only down. That's symbolism for you. And she gets down there, she goes, and she eventually finds Red. And Red gives some more backstory, talking about how much she has suffered, and how it's only because of Adelaide that she found God and whatnot.
Yep.
And how specifically, she says, I found God while dancing, and to think, I only learned to dance because of you. And Adelaide is fueled with rage, and so she tries to attack. And Red dodges. And they have this sequence of like a dance fight playing ballet music where Red just is like swiftly dodging every movement.
Intersped with scenes of them doing ballet.
Yeah, like flashbacks when they were younger, right? And so this fight is weird, right?
Yeah.
There's a very weird tension with this fight because Red, the bad guy, seems extremely composed and swift. Adelaide, the good guy, is filled with fury and vengeance and is screaming as she's trying to stab Red.
She also is wearing white pajamas that have been stained red by now from all the
blood,
fighting
yeah.
and the blood. Yeah.
In the end, Adelaide does win the fight. She finally manages to get a hit on Red, ends up using the handcuffs to choke her to death. And after she kills her, she finds Jason, who was in a locker and saw the whole fight go down. And he is extremely traumatized by this.
Yep. And so she takes her son away, and we see them in the car going away. And then,
Happily ever after, the end.
except not. Because that's
When Adelaide starts reflecting on her PTSD, and we get some flashbacks.
and it seems to have unlocked some memories, and she remembers that
when they were kids,
yeah,
and she first saw her other self in the Hall of Mirrors.
she was the one who was underground, and she switched places with her other self.
Yes. She knocked her other self out, dragged her down,
Handcuffed her to the bed.
and made her the tethered one.
Yep, and
She
left.
swapped.
Yep, she swapped. Which is why she couldn't speak at first when she went back to her parents, because she didn't know how.
It's why after that whole incident she had to get therapy. She
And
picked
why
up dancing.
Yeah, because they thought that dancing would help her in therapy, and that's
The PTSD is not from the 15 minutes she was gone. It's from the 5 years of her life or however long that she was tethered.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's basically the plot of the movie. After she has this realization, she looks to Jason, and you can clearly see Jason knows.
Mm-hmm.
He's figured it out.
Mm-hmm.
And he puts the monster mask on.
The Chewbacca mask.
Sure.
Yeah.
To indicate that he doesn't feel safe.
Mm-hmm.
Because he knows that one of them still lives.
Mm-hmm.
There's also this subplot where there was this advertisement early on that
hands across the world.
yeah, where it was like this like kind of like superficial protest movement.
It was a food
idea.
drive.
Yeah, to like everyone hold hands across America.
Yeah.
Well, Red believed in that, and part of the movement, you can kind of piece it together. The idea is she organized everyone because she was different, right? Mm-hmm. She was effectively a revolutionary.
Yeah, and she was obsessed with that shirt that had the Hands Across America on it because that's what she was wearing.
So the mission was for every tethered to try to kill their upper self, and if they succeed, go take your place in line and hold hands. To demonstrate to the world we are here. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the movie, after Jason knows, it zooms out and you see the hillside, the countryside across America, and you just see a line of red dividing it in half. Mm-hmm. And these are all of the tethered that survived the day.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So I think it's fair to say that the villain of this movie is Adelaide.
Yeah, it's actually Adelaide.
Because, like, what is this movie about, right? This one's a lot more nebulous than Get Out. And
yeah,
it
really is.
And because of that, I think people take to it a bit less. But I still think it's interesting to talk about.
Yeah, I think so, too.
I mean, at the end of the day, it's class warfare.
Yeah, it is.
It's an upper class and a lower class.
Mm-hmm. Like, Adelaide rose up. She climbed the gold escalator. Very difficult. Yeah,
she
got up there.
And I think the golden escalator is meant to be an example of something that's not impossible to climb, but very difficult.
Mm-hmm.
And but also the labyrinthian way of the underground, it's difficult to even find in the first place.
Yep.
Which is to represent how it can be difficult to even find out how you're supposed to climb the ladder to the richer classes. And even if you do find it, it's going to be extremely difficult. Adelaide climbs it and pulls it up behind her. Mm-hmm. Throws Red back down there. Takes her place.
Yep. One thing Red says during it is, you could have taken me with you.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And this is kind of why I wanted to point out about how affluent and rich the Black family is, you know?
Yeah, because it's very much part of the story.
Yeah, but it's also kind of an indictment upon them, you know? Like, for most of the characters, I don't really blame them. I don't blame Gabe or Zora or Jason. Like, they are better off than most people. We don't know the White family too much, so I can't say how much I blame them. They're more just kind of a stand-in for the upper class itself.
Yeah.
But they didn't know about the tethered. Mm-hmm. They had ignorance they could bask in, right?
Yeah. Adelaide knew.
Yes, and that's why she's the villain.
Because she knew and did nothing.
Over her entire life, she could have done literally anything. She could have, like, blown the whistle, talked about it. She could have just literally gone back down there to see it again, you know? Mm-hmm. Like, I get, yeah, she was a kid, but, like...
When she got older.
Yeah, exactly.
Anything. But she climbed up it and never looked back. Mm-hmm. Never look back. It's the definition of once you get to where you want to be, you don't acknowledge where you came from.
Exactly. Right. You know, kind of, almost like that kind of code switching kind of idea again, right?
Yeah.
Where, you know, they became kind of gentrified into the upper white class.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, not entirely. It doesn't work the same way the Get Out movie does. Mm-hmm. Because this movie, I think, is a lot more about class divide. But the fact that the main characters are the only Black members in this class, I do think it inherently says something about race as well.
Yeah. But yeah. It's a really good analogy. The only thing I'd say is that it's a bit too subtle, but other than that, I think that it holds up really well.
What? You're telling me that having an underclass that completely supports the upper class, that is, maybe the back of the workers,
And
that
dressed entirely in red jumpsuits.
might be something called a proletariat?
Yeah. The fact that I didn't even think about that, but yeah, they wear red jumpsuits.
And the name of the movie is U.S.
Yeah. When you think about it, it just blows your mind how obvious it is.
Yeah, yeah. It's and the tethered people, they eat rabbits because that's the only thing that breeds down there,
Yep.
and it's awful.
Yep. Oh, and that's Red's. That's why Red's is voiced the way it is because
She
she
hasn't
knows how to
spoken.
talk, but she hasn't spoken a word in at
20
least
years.
yeah, at least a decade, if not way more.
Probably 20 years.
Yeah, probably at least 20 years.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's why her voice is so hoarse. But it's also why she's different. The tethered people are very much said to be, biologically identical. There is nothing essentially different about them. The thing that makes them most different is education. Adelaide goes down there, and she had 5-10 years of above ground education, but that instantly made her more knowledgeable than anyone else. So it's not a surprise that she then becomes literally the revolutionary, using her ability to speak and plan things to rally the others to try to better their lives by fighting to the death for it.
Yep.
And the idea that the tethered are controlled by the above ground ones, I think the movie would, many of the characters in the movie would probably be happy to think, oh, well, that stinks for them, but that's just the way they were made, right? But the whole Adelaide and Red switch shows us that it's actually not about anything essentially different between the two of them.
Yes,
It
exactly.
is the societal structure.
Yes.
Being down there means you'll be controlled by the above.
Yes, exactly. And the proof of that is that Adelaide and Red switched, and then Adelaide learned how to speak, and Red, became a tethered, and yeah.
Yep.
So
It's a very much of a societal critique.
yeah, absolutely.
It's really that's why Red says we're Americans. The show is an indictment on America.
Yeah.
Well, at the same time,
movie.
at the same time, kind of having a level of compassion for Americans.
Yeah,
The
true.
movie hates America. Good, please do, but it feels for Americans, and that Red, it represents the underclass, hardworking Americans of no, we're the Americans, right?
Yep.
Although I don't feel like it's necessarily exclusionary. It's not like the rich upper class people aren't Americans. It's just there's a much more important designator on why you need to be gotten rid of than American.
Yeah.
And that is, rich or upper class.
Yep.
So the movie does kind of have a bleak view of class warfare in a way, of almost some people you could read from it that the movie is basically saying that civil war is inevitable. And when this movie came out in 2018, 2019, the Trump administration, and 2020 was around the corner, and we all saw what happened on January 6th, right?
Yeah.
That was a very much real possibility.
Yeah.
It still is.
Yeah. So this you know what? I feel like this movie as well as Get Out are very essential to the the
Late 2010s.
yeah, the late 2010s. They essentialize that decade. They are representative of those years.
Yeah. But yeah, the movie would effectively say that civil war is inevitable, but I think it offers a bit more nuance of an opinion than that. The movie is saying that if you take the Adelaide approach and you ignore it, if you don't do anything, then yes, this is inevitable. After all, what were the tethered to do? You might want to be the tethered are bad because they just went to murder. It's did they ever know anything else?
Exactly.
Do you really think that if they just came above and were hey, we're here, that things would have happened for them?
Absolutely not.
They would have just been a new, like, imagine America's population just doubling overnight, and the new double, the new half of your population has literally nothing. Do you think the government's going to get on that?
Nope.
Yeah. So, and you have to keep in mind how uneducated they were, and so, like, I don't feel like it's a surprise that they turned to violence. I'm not saying that the violence was justified. I'm just not really going to blame them.
Yeah, exactly. And I agree with you.
Because the reason I say the violence isn't justified is because the violence isn't happening to the people that deserve it.
Yeah.
Every corresponding person in America is not the person that deserves the violence. Obviously, it would be the people running the government. But even then, the people that were responsible for that decision are dead. They were in the past. In much of the same way, I think the tether is kind of a metaphor for, Jim Crow, civil rights, or slavery, right?
Yeah.
Not civil rights, the predecessor to all that.
Yeah.
Like, slavery, really. Like, this great sin that the nation has made in the long past that no one direct person is responsible for.
But no one has made up for.
Well, that no one is innocent from benefiting from.
Yeah.
Or except
Or
for the
has
people that
done
are
anything
specifically
about.
at harm for.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think the movie's kind of more of a cautionary tale of don't be like Adelaide. Don't know of this and not act on it. Now, you could maybe sympathize with Adelaide with saying she had some type of PTSD or whatnot. She, after all, was a victim, right? But I don't know. That feels like trying to apologize for, like, Andrew Carnegie.
Because, like, once she got re-educated or whatever, like, learned how to talk and learned, like, she should have realized.
Well, here's the thing. You could read the movie as her only getting the memory back at the end, that she had PTSD. I could see people reading it that way. I think that's far too charitable.
I think so, too.
Like, there's early scenes in the movie where she sees a bunny rabbit plushie, and she gets viscerally uncomfortable. She hates that thing. And I don't think that was just a vague trigger whose source she couldn't remember or repressed. I think she was kind of wanting to not think about it.
Yep.
And considering the fact that she remembers this and, doesn't tell anyone, when she looks at Jason and Jason knows, she just kind of makes a smile. It very much to me feels like it's kind of a I made it. I got mine. That's all she cares about.
Yep.
Again, I think Adelaide is the villain and Red was the hero.
Yep. It was a really good movie.
Yeah, it's really an uncomfortable movie.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Makes you really think about things. And I think ultimately the message of us is let's not get to that point.
Yeah.
Let's not get there.
Please.
I want to see the alternate version of this movie where Adelaide became like a social worker or activist or something. And you know what? She doesn't even have to be successful. It could end the same way, but at least you could say she tried.
Yeah.
After all, one person's not enough. You have to get other people on board. But, like, I mean, assuming you could just literally go back there and, like, hey, here's the golden escalator. Like, you could use that proof to do something. Just imagining, like, on social media, like, you see stuff about, like, the Uyghur genocide and whatnot. Be like, more news about the tethered. Why aren't we doing anything? Biden says he has a new plan to give households to 10% of the hardest working tethered that are business owners.
Yeah.
That kind of nonsense.
Because that's how America would handle it.
For now.
All right.
Although the movie, the way it ends with like the big red line, is very much kind of like a now what situation. They've made their presence known, and they've done it very bloodily. Now what?
Yep.
And I think you're not really supposed to think about that too hard, to be honest.
Yeah.
Because I really do think you're supposed to think of like how we got to that point in this world, as opposed to like what would logically happen after. Because what happens after is really a huge unknown. They've made their presence known. And
there's got to be some people who survived.
And as bloody as it was, and as unnecessarily violent this was, they got what they wanted: recognition and a possible chance at life. You get the feeling that, like, no matter how many of them died in this, dying was worth not having to live in the conditions they were in anymore.
Yep.
Which is, I think, probably the largest reason why I wouldn't be able to blame them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just like, you would with actual poor people in that situation in the real world that they're a metaphor for.
Yep. Yeah, they literally lived underground in stark white hospital-like halls and rooms with nothing to eat but raw rabbit.
Yeah, and I mean, that might sound extreme, but there are situations in the world where that's not too much of a caricature. Because, I mean, I don't want to portray it as something as simple as like a spectrum of a line where you got like a hit the hammer type of mini game where you have to, like, just get the ball right. You went over and killed some innocents. It's not that simple, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But my point is you have to look at their material conditions, and you have to at least be empathetic with. If you only look at the violence in changing the system into a fairer one, and you ignore the violence of the status quo, the number of tortured, dead, tethered, or poor people that endure something, the genocide of people around the world.
Yeah.
If you ignore that violence, and you cry and whine about, violence of changing the system, you're ignorant.
Yep. All right.
Of course, we're talking about a fictional movie. The American Revolution was violent, but we're glad to have democracy, or at least some form of it, as opposed to monarchy, right?
Yep.
American patriotism. Signing off. Bye.
Bye.
Don't hate us, YouTube.